I'm Alistair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is Vincent in Collateral. One of the wonders of the motion picture is that it is an infinitely malleable medium. We can do anything with movies. We can make films about romance, about passion, about courage, about hope and despair, about toys that come to life when no one's around. And sometimes, in special occasions, under special circumstances, we can dare to ask the biggest questions of the human condition. Such as, what if you could drive around LA and all the roads were empty but for you?
That would be cool.
Fantasy wonderland. Elizabeth, I have never been to LA. I've certainly never driven in LA. You have.
A couple times now, yeah.
What is it like in real life? And then, secondarily, how does Michael Mann realize that on the silver screen?
Well, I've never driven in the middle of the night, so
Sure.
I will say that. And I haven't also been stuck in the worst of the gridlock traffic that LA is known for. So I've been pretty fortunate that the times I've been driving have been 2 p.m. and then, 6 p.m. But then I'm way out on the outskirts. So in my experience, the opening segments where he's driving are pretty similar. It was not as bad as people said. And I was like, oh, I recognize LAX. I recognize him going downtown. And this is what it felt like. And it felt much more normal than what people say. And certainly everybody has an idea of how you can get somewhere faster. So that part is true to life for sure. But this whole middle of the night, empty, desolate, this is my playground, like a kid with a Hot Wheels set. Never have I done. I don't think probably anybody has. But I did think it was cool. It was fun to watch.
Is it recognizably LA to you?
To me, yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the interesting things is that it would not have been recognizable to me as LA if I had not been.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that there's no critical consensus on this at all. Some critics of this film were overwhelmed by how it depicts LA as a city, as a real, vibrant, living place, which movies so rarely do.
Almost never.
And other critics, including some critics from LA, said, this does not look like my city. This does not feel familiar. This feels like it is made out of Lego bricks.
It is alienating.
Yeah.
It looks very different from what it feels like to be in LA, which is a strange thing to say if you can parse that. But yeah, that's not how people talk about, think about, or work in LA as I have seen.
Yeah.
But again, I've been, mostly in West Hollywood, mostly doing film stuff. So I don't know about people who, are, say, district attorneys. Maybe so. But well, and I think about, the guys who, when he's calling for help in the alley, I'm like, you do not call for help in an alley downtown. I've barely been there and I've never been to the downtown area, but I know that that's why we don't shoot there. It's no, all your cars will get broken into. All your stuff is going to get lifted. You cannot shoot downtown. So I don't know. I think that some of it is true to life. On a much more important stylistic note, what do you think of Tom Cruise's gray hair?
It's a look.
It's a look.
It's a look. Listeners may be able to tell, keen-eyed listeners, keen-eared listeners might be able to tell that I'm still struggling with this film a little bit, even as we enter the podcast record, because I'm really not sure what I make of it, despite the fact that I think it is almost technically perfect. I think that it really doesn't do anything wrong at all. It does a lot of things very, very well. It does a lot of things very right, but to me, overall, it feels, empty. It feels as empty as these nighttime streets. It feels as unreal and as elevated as these nighttime streets. And I'm really interested to get into our discussion of the film. And there's maybe no better exemplar of this weirdly elevated but also artificial presentation than Tom Cruise's appearance in this film. It's wild, right?
It is weird. Yeah. At first I thought that I liked it. Because it's such a vibe. He looks like a video game character, he looks like the Hitman guy a little bit.
The whole thing feels like Grand Theft Auto.
Right?
The whole thing just feels that level of artificiality.
Totally. Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. Which, again, is its own kind of fun if you're here for it.
Sure.
Yeah. But I couldn't get over how much it reminded me of just theater makeup, Like someone had patted him down with powder and then sprayed him with a lot of hairspray. It just didn't feel like his.
It's the whole thing, right? It's the whole underlying idea is kind of misaligned because he's supposed to be anonymous. He's supposed to be able to go anywhere. He
not
talks
an
about how this
anonymous-looking guy.
city is disconnected and everyone is isolated, which is, of course, the thing which facilitates his business.
Right.
That is what allows him to do what he does. And he is the most distinctive looking dude in the world.
Completely agree. Yeah, that
Not
was a
just
weird choice.
The hair, the beard, his, of course, Tom Cruise energy, but that
The perfect suit. Yeah.
He's always dressed more lightly than anyone else in
Yes.
any scene. It's just a weird
Especially
choice.
for the first hit where he's in these like kind of slummy apartments, you
Yeah.
know? And you're like, sir, you are a massive standout, you know? It was very
Absolutely.
strange.
Particularly contrasted with the very naturally dressed Jamie Foxx, who we'll, I guess,
Yeah.
talk about as we get into it, but we cannot get into it until we have observed the necessities we have to do the trailer game. And it's your turn this week.
Okay. Pop quiz hotshot. A hitman climbs in the back of your taxi. What are you going to do? Kick him out? I feel like a lot of people would kick him out, but not this guy, not Max. Max stays with him to the finish. Hit by hit by hit by hit in the desolate streets of LA. Jamie Foxx, 2 X's, will learn how to carry the gun, how to save the girl, and probably get one step closer to driving limos instead of cabs. Tom Cruise as you've never seen him before in Collateral.
Jamie Foxx will hold the gun. He will get the girl. He will maybe someday drive a limo, but he will also be second billed in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Despite the fact that he's absolutely the lead.
Definitely the protagonist. 100% the lead. Yeah. And great, I think. What do you think about Jamie Foxx?
I think he's outstanding.
Right?
I think he's absolutely outstanding.
So watchable.
A couple of slips where
Sure.
he is, a couple of moments in which he is just too good.
Just too cool.
Just too good in this film.
Sure.
Which is a terrible problem to have as an actor, I guess. I think he is, absolutely terrific. Completely consistent. It's a very selfless performance from him. And of course, this is the big turning point in his career. This is the big turning point in most of these people's careers, in fact, because this is kind of oddly, for all that it's a film that doesn't have much of a reputation, it's a weirdly definitive film for both Cruise and Fox on the acting side, and then for Michael Mann as a director too. But we'll get into all of that. We have to begin our story, though, in the distant past. We have to begin our story with Stuart Beattie, who was born in Melbourne, Australia in 1971. He attends Charles Sturt University in Bathurst, during which time he takes a study abroad opportunity with Oregon State University in the US. It's while he's in the US in 1991 that he is inspired by a little regarded ride at Disneyland to write a script.
What?
The ride is Pirates of the Caribbean. The script is Quest for the Caribbean. It was, of course, never produced,
Yeah.
but there's a certain poetry to the way that in 2002, more than a decade later, when he is already successful in his homeland and is taking his shot in Hollywood, his first job is to take Jay Wolpert's first draft for the Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl movie and add more pirates. That is his job. That is how he gets his start in Hollywood.
Wow.
And he has a story by credit on that script.
Cute.
Nice little synchronicity there,
Yeah.
right? Still waiting tables to make ends meet, but with just enough juice in the industry to get some attention, he meets with a producer from Edge City, a production company that's started by Frank Darabont, by Rob Fried, and by Chuck Russell to make low-budget movies for HBO. Beattie told the producer, Julie Richardson, that he had an idea about a murderer sitting in the back of a cab chatting casually with the driver. The idea is called The Last Domino, and Richardson likes it. Beattie's brought in to meet with HBO. He writes 2 drafts, and then it falls apart and HBO passes. Still searching for work, he meets with Mark Hames at DreamWorks, who is intrigued. He gets the script, he reads the script, he buys it the next day, and Collateral is born. Beattie is largely going to leave the story at this point, so we will note that he kicks around in Hollywood for the next couple of years. The highlights are a screenwriting credit on Baz Luhrmann's Australia, where he is one of 4 credited writers on that movie.
Sure.
The following year, he has both a story by credit and a screenplay credit on G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. But you do what you got to do.
You do.
what
God
you
knows.
got to do. Fernando Mireles is tapped by DreamWorks. He's brought in early, having just directed City of God, but he looks at the script as an action comedy, and that is not what they want. So they part
I can
ways.
see it there, though.
It's all there on the
Yeah.
page. It takes like a tonal twist. It's a little turn of the screw.
Yeah.
And you have a full-on, Owen Wilson, Jackie Chan action
Totally.
comedy happening right here. Russell Crowe at this point is interested in playing Vincent.
I could see that.
I think that would have been a disaster.
Oh, absolutely a disaster. But I can see a casting agent thinking
Well, it's not even a casting agent. It's him
Oh,
personally.
himself.
He is really interested.
Oh, sure.
He is the one that gets Michael Mann attached because they had just worked together on The Insider. Let's talk about Michael Mann, who I think is really interesting because he is not one of the directors that people who don't care about movies know, right? He's not a Spielberg. He's not a Scorsese. He's just a working guy. But if you know about movies, then you definitely have an opinion on the work of Michael Mann. He's born in February of 1943 in, it's weird. It rarely comes up in his work, but he's actually born in Chicago. He goes to the University of Wisconsin at Madison to study English literature. Then he goes to a screening of Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. And that's it. His life changes. He is immediately passionate about film. He graduates the University of Wisconsin in 1965. He gets an MA from the London Film School in 1967. He hangs around in the UK. He shoots commercials while he's building his reputation. He returns to the US in 1971. 1974, he's given a crash course in television production, which is kind of where he stays for a little while. He writes for Starsky and Hutch. He writes for Police Story. He directs an episode of The Police Woman in 1977. Then he gets his first swing in Hollywood in 1981 with the James Caan heist drama Thief. From there, he continues to work in film and TV through the 80s. In 1986, he directs the first big screen adaptation of Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter stories with Manhunter. In 1992, he directs The Last of the Mohicans, which gets a certain amount of attention, just a really small movie, really no one really paid any attention to. In 1995, Heat, still a definitive movie of the 1990s. In 1999, he directs the Al Pacino, Russell Crowe drama The Insider, and then in 2001, the Will Smith Oscar play Ali, about the life of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, sure.
Didn't really work out in terms of it being an Oscar play, but it is a big turning point in the career of Will Smith, I think. After Collateral, Mann will bring Fox and Colin Farrell to the Miami Vice reboot. Sure. Then he will make Public Enemies with Johnny Depp and Christian Bale and Marion Cotillard.
Yeah.
He will deliver one of the largest bombs of the modern era with the 2015 What If Chris Hemsworth Were a Sexy Super Smart Computer Hacker movie Black Hat, which made $8 million at the domestic box office off of a budget of $60 million.
Yikes. Never even heard of that one.
And then, after 8 years away, he will direct Ferrari with Adam Driver, Penelope Cruz, and most importantly, Patrick Dempsey, of course.
In the same weird white hair
Most importantly,
look.
Patrick Dempsey giving some kind of performance. Something's definitely happening on screen. We talked a little about Ferrari in a previous episode, and that's an interesting film. Penelope Cruz,
I
at
think
least,
that might have been a Patreon special, but
strong.
I'm not sure. Yes, Penelope
we would have
Cruz
talked
is
about
very-
it for Vanilla Sky, at least, I'm sure.
Maybe so, maybe
Yeah.
so.
She's so good in that film.
She is, it's true.
Back in the early 2000s, though, at this point in Michael Mann's career, it is taking a long time to get this project moving, and Crowe, as is his way at this point, loses interest. Then Mann goes to the obvious first choice cast, right? You lose Russell Crowe, you kind of scrabble and you think, okay, who can I replace Russell Crowe with? Obviously, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise needs a sidekick. Obviously, Adam Sandler.
Whoa.
Adam Sandler is at this point riding high on Punch Drunk Love and Mr. Deeds in 2002 and Anger Management in 2003.
It's such a different movie.
I just named 3 films, by the way, that he made in 2002, 2003. Those are 3 of the 12 movies in which Adam Sandler stars between 2001 and 2003 inclusive.
Damn.
12 films in 3 years.
That's a lot.
It's
That's a lot of
arguably
work.
far too much. far too much. I do need to see Punch Drunk Love because
I haven't either.
of our new fondness for PTA.
That's
and
true.
That's the one that everyone says Sandler is good in.
That's
I
what they
have
say.
yet to see it myself. Sandler thankfully drops out to go and appear in James L. Brooks's Spanglish. Stuart Beatty at this point goes to the studio to request that they cast Robert De Niro as a, taxi driver and is laughed out of the room, appropriately so.
naturally.
Instead, they get Jamie Foxx, who is on very much of an upswing here. He is born Eric Marlon Bishop in Texas in 1967. He comes up primarily as a comic actor, of course. He chooses his stage name specifically because it is ambiguously gendered after he discovers that the MCs at the stand-up clubs where he's beginning to perform would call up female comedians early in the night and leave the men for much, much later when the response from the crowd was worse. So he wanted to get the jump on the evening.
Interesting.
And wanted to appear earlier in the night. So he chose this ambiguously gendered name. He joins In Living Color, of course, in 1991 and is kind of definitive of that kind of comedy, the comedy rise of the 1990s. His first dramatic role is with Oliver Stone in Any Given Sunday in 1999. In 2001, he's hired by Michael Mann for Ali. Both he and Jada Pinkett Smith have previously appeared in Ali by this point. The two hit it off, and this is his turning point because at the 77th Academy Awards in February of 2005, he he is nominated twice. He's nominated as a supporting actor for Collateral. He loses to Morgan Freeman for $1 Million Baby, but should have lost to Thomas Hayden Church for Sideways, though it's close. I'll give it. It's close. I think this is a great performance. His other nomination, though, is for Best Actor for the movie Ray, which he wins, ahead of Clint Eastwood for $1 Million Baby, Leonardo DiCaprio for The Aviator, Johnny Depp wildly for Finding Neverland, a movie that was somehow nominated for an Oscar, and Don Cheadle for Hotel Rwanda, which is a very different performance, but an extremely good one. That is it. That win is what seals his fate, because at that point, he becomes Jamie Foxx, leading man.
Yeah.
And his career is much less interesting from that point on.
I don't remember anything really after that. Ray was the thing. And after that, Spider-Man is what I think of.
Exactly, which is almost a full decade later.
Yeah.
It's not strong, unfortunately. He continues, I think, to give very personable, very charming work, but his career just hasn't connected these films together into a narrative the way that we might wish that it had. Weirdly, Jamie Foxx dates Katie Holmes from 2013 to 2019. That's from the year after she divorces Tom Cruise, which is wild.
That's so weird.
And last year, Jamie Foxx was hospitalized with a serious but unreleased condition. We don't know what it was. He hasn't talked about. He's talked about the severity of whatever it was he was suffering from. It left him unable to walk and unable to speak for a period of months.
Damn.
He's back. He seems okay, I guess. He appeared at the Critics' Choice Awards in December of last year, and seems to be firing on all cylinders again. So I don't know what that will do for his career, but he's oddly enigmatic for all that he's an extremely public figure.
I was just thinking of, things he starred in, and I guess Django comes to mind. I didn't see Django,
yes, of
but
course.
that got a lot of great buzz
worked
for
with
his
Tarantino
work.
and Django Unchained. That was, I mean, perhaps his highest profile leading role in a while.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. What's your feelings about Jamie Foxx? You must have been a fan in the 1990s. I mean, it was absolutely necessary that everyone was, I guess.
I guess. I didn't see Ray, but I remember seeing those Oscars, and I remember all the buzz leading up to the Oscars and just everybody talking about that performance. I think I did see some of it, actually, but I never saw the full movie all the way through. And he seemed wonderful. I like him in this, but I don't have a lot of Jamie Foxx in my repertoire. I don't know.
He's an incredibly winning presence on screen.
I think so. I loved him in this.
Effortless, natural charisma. But this film really does betray, I think, the fact that he is a better and more complex actor than we might usually think. I think leading man is a bad place for him. I think he ought not to be there. I think that giving him something to do draws out all of this interesting complexity and humility from him that I find really, really engaging. I think this is probably my favorite performance of his. At least that maybe there were some other things out there that I haven't seen yet, but of the movies that I've seen, I think he's pretty much unbeatable in this film.
Yeah, I think it's great.
At this point, we normally run through the other members of the cast, and we're going to, but we should observe how much this film is a two-hander, how much it is Cruise and Fox together. We will, of course, talk a little about Jada Pinkett Smith. She's born in 1971 in Baltimore. She attends the Baltimore School for the Arts, where she sells drugs and meets and befriends Tupac Shakur. She graduates in 89 and attends the North Carolina School for the Arts for a year before she just begins booking work. She breaks in A Different World in 1991, for which she shoots 46 episodes, and immediately steps up into movies. She doesn't return to TV until 2009. She's in Menace to Society in 1993. She's in The Nutty Professor in 1996. She's in Scream 2 in 1997, which is the same year that she marries Will Smith after dating him for 2 years. Wow. She's 3 months pregnant when they marry. And that whole story is weird and sad and feels intrusive. So we're not going to do it. We're not going to get into the odd details of Jada Pinkett Smith's marriage, right?
Okay, sure. Okay. I think that's fair.
It's just strange.
Not what we're here to talk about.
And she has certainly talked about it publicly enough, and you can go and find the record on that, I guess, if you're so inclined. Jada works with Mann in Ali in 2001, as I mentioned, and then is completely brilliant in the Matrix sequels in 2003, playing Niobe. She's so good in those films. It's wild that she didn't have the career that she deserved coming off of them. And I know that the Matrix sequels have a shaky reputation. They're better than you think. They were always better than we thought. But after time has passed and we've got some perspective on them, I think they are really solid and interesting films. After Collateral, she will work a lot providing voices for the Madagascar series of movies. She'll work on a few more films, including the belated Matrix sequel. She also hosts 129 episodes of the Facebook Watch talk show, Red Table Talk. in which she frequently talks with her mother and her daughter, and there's a couple of episodes where she talks with her husband too. It's
Weird,
all
I've never
very
heard of this.
personal and discursive and kind of exploitative of the nature of celebrity in a really uncomfortable way.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think of Jada Pinkett Smith? Did she ever leave an impression on you, like as you were, coming up through the late 90s into the 2000s?
Only on red carpets. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. She and
Fair.
Will always looked amazing on the red carpet, and that's basically my memory of her. Yeah.
We'll talk a little about Mark Ruffalo, too, who is in this film for some reason. He's really good. But wow, you could cut the scenes out and leave nothing behind.
That's right.
He is the pride of Kenosha, Wisconsin. He was born in 1967. He moves around a lot as a kid and ends up taking classes at the Stellar Adler Conservatory in LA. He begins working in 1989 and spends the 90s just grinding out TV, film, and theater work, building a strong reputation, but never quite breaking. That changes thanks to writer-director Kenneth Lonergan, who casts him in the original off-Broadway run of This Is Our Youth in 1996, which is a huge success. And then in the film You Can Count on Me in 2000. Ruffalo gets excellent reviews, and after a decade of putting in the work, putting in the time, putting in the effort, he is finally ready for his career to begin. And in 2001, after having a dream in which he realizes that he has a brain tumor, he's diagnosed with a brain tumor, specifically a vestibular schwannoma. It's removed, but it leaves him with permanent hearing loss in his left ear and partial facial paralysis for almost a year. Yeah. When he comes back to Hollywood, he is different. He's not that guy anymore. He is older. He is more complex. He is arguably, I think, a much more interesting actor. The same year as Collateral, he will also appear in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and 13 Going on 30.
Whoa.
All in the same year.
Wild.
In 2007, he will be fantastic in Fincher's Zodiac. In 2010, he'll be fantastic in Shutter Island. And then in 2012, there's a little movie called The Avengers. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's kind of indie, kind of underground, kind of cool. His high point, as far as we're concerned, comes the following year in 2013's Begin Again, the John Carney movie Begin Again with Keira Knightley.
Love him.
And then he's nominated for an Academy Award for last year's Poor Things. Mark Ruffalo's fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we love him.
Like reliably extremely good.
Yes.
And I think really brilliant in this film for all that the film does not care about him one bit.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. I mean, I don't have anything to say about him too much, only because, again, the character is just not that interesting. And like, I'm the detective that's going to solve this case, and I'm the only one who believes in this thing. But then, yeah, you just shoot him dead so fast. It's like, okay, well.
And for all that we've talked about Cruise, Ruffalo has the weirdest look in this film.
Oh, yeah.
This weird, slicked back, like late era Steven Seagal look that he's got going. It's so weird.
He's supposed to be like an undercover detective.
I think that's what we're supposed to glean from his appearance. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, all right. But ick.
We're leaning real hard on it, though.
Yeah.
I cannot say enough good things about him in this movie. I think he's just terrific and handles what is a pretty thankless role and some really clunky dialogue and some really clunky performance spaces too, right? We're so enthusiastic about isolating him in the shot when he's on set that we just give him very difficult things for an actor to communicate with their bodies. And I think he does fantastically well.
Cool.
Really, really great performance. Let's talk about Cruise then. Cruise, obviously, wanting to appear like anyone, wanting to appear incognito in this film, actually takes a job with FedEx in LA for a week as practice for just moving through the world and not being Tom Cruise in it. What's really interesting is that everyone is very enthusiastic to relate the fact that he did this. And nowhere on the internet can I find any details about how it went, which leads me to believe that it went very badly. And I'm reminded of All the Right Moves, where Leah Thompson enrolls in a local high school, gets asked out by kids, gets caught smoking in the bathroom, and finally has to reveal herself as not being a high schooler. And Tom Cruise is rumbled within the first hour.
Yeah.
I think that maybe he is a guy who does not go undercover.
Maybe. Yeah.
And really,
that's interesting.
For all that we talk about
FedEx
that,
driver.
Isn't that weird?
That is
weird. You would know immediately. Like, even if you had never seen a Tom Cruise film, even if you had no concept of who he was as a movie star, that guy gets out of a FedEx truck and you start looking for hidden cameras. You start thinking that something is weird.
definitely.
Jamie Foxx also trained as a cab driver on the streets of LA. He learned how to navigate the streets of LA and how to drive and handle LA traffic
I
in an
believed
actual taxi
every
cab.
word that he said.
He is driving a lot of those scenes that where we're shooting from an exterior, we're shooting from a trailing car, we're shooting from a rig that's attached to the side of the cab.
Right.
I think there are 17 different cabs that are used in the course of this film because
sure.
some
Of
are
course it
rigged
gets
with
beat
cameras
up
and
and it
some are
gets-
not.
yeah,
Various
yeah.
stages of disrepair and so on and so forth. But he really did learn how to drive a cab in LA and said that he really enjoyed it. Apparently he was very successful at it.
I imagine so. Yeah.
So working for FedEx didn't work out very well for Cruise, but he did learn one other crucial skill for this film, which is firing live ammunition. Michael Mann is kind of obsessive about how gunshots look and sound on film. He doesn't like the way that blanks sound. He doesn't like the way that the sound of a gun is processed in most films. He wants more authenticity. He wants more immediacy than that. So Cruise is firing real live ammunition in this movie. He is trained for 3 months by the LAPD to be responsible around a firearm. How did anyone get insurance for this film?
Wow. No, I hate that.
How is it possible?
Yeah, that's terrible. Bad filmmaking. Shame on you, Michael Mann.
Well, it's kind of Michael Mann's whole thing, right? His deal, we kind of glossed his history, but his deal is a gritty, grimy authenticity. He is interested in real cops and using them in his film. He's interested in real criminals and using them in his film. He likes to cast from the real world and get this real gritty sense of authenticity, which is why Collateral is such a weird film.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, it feels like a video game. It feels elevated.
And I would say the cinematography is excellent. It's a beautiful movie to watch. It's one that kept on coming up when I was in film school about this is how you use different lenses and this is what you get when you switch them out.
Because it is so intentional in that regard. I think you're absolutely right. It's shot half on 35mm film and half on what was then an experimental digital camera, which is, you can tell, I think, as you're watching it, that sometimes you're in this very classic, poised, composed, filmed shot, and then you'll cut to the reverse angle and it will be this shaky handheld digital thing. It's a really weird effect that he uses masterfully. I think he has a complete mastery of what's appearing on screen, but it feels like an impersonal film. And this is kind of my take on the film. My ultimate take on this film is this is a triumph of technical craft that doesn't have heart behind it. I don't think that this film has anything to say. I think everyone showed up to work. Yeah. Everyone gave their A game, and it cuts together into what is a really enjoyable, as you're watching it, but ultimately extremely superficial and hollow film. I don't think that there's any depth here at all. Do you? I mean, not to put you on the spot and make you defend this movie, but I'm curious about how you feel about it as we're going in.
Well, I like Jamie Foxx as Max so much, and it's hard to describe Max as not having any heart. Like his whole thing is all the heart that he has. So I don't know if I can quite go with you on that.
In the individual moments, I think yes. There is heart in his performance, and there's a little bit in the script too. But what I mean is depth. What does it mean? Who is this guy? What are we supposed to take from it? Is there any kind of moral lesson? Is there any kind of perspective on the human condition? Is there any kind of philosophical complexity to what is happening in this film that clearly purports to have a great deal of philosophical complexity?
I was going to say, it definitely, writes it in there. So, I mean, to me, the way that it fails that particular test is just that I am not convinced that Max's life is going to change all that much afterwards.
I absolutely agree. But also I think that is a common feature of Michael Mann's movies as well, is the idea that the film is going to stop, but things are not better. Things are not, if anything, things are worse. Things have been broken and ruined. Do we think that Max and Annie are going to get together and go on a date and live happily ever after this film?
Probably not, right?
Probably not.
Get separate trauma counseling, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's probably best for them.
Maybe they'll meet up for coffee in 6 months or 2 years' time, and it'll just be awkward and horrible because of what they've been through. And I commend Mann for that, because for all that he glamorizes violence and crime, he also treats very carefully, I think, and very fully the consequences of that violence and crime. These people don't escape the traps of their own lives, which is maybe the philosophical angle you can take on Max as a character, right? That he also, though the trap of his own life is much more mundane and much more prosaic, he also cannot escape the trap of his own life. We'll maybe circle back around to that at the end. We should note the timeline here because it's going to be very important over the course of the next couple of episodes. Tom Cruise and Penelope Cruz break up in January of 2004, the month after principal photography on this film ends. 2 months later, he ends his professional relationship with Pat Kingsley, his publicist. They had met on the set of A Few Good Men and had worked together closely ever since. She was and is a renowned hard ass. She is one of the hardest playing publicists in the business. She keeps the press on the tightest of leashes. She forces interviewers to sign contracts stating that they will not sell quotes or stories to supermarket tabloids specifically.
Yeah.
She demands that interview footage be erased after the interview has been edited and has aired. She is just a bulldog in the industry and a real force for good, I think, in Tom Cruise's life, as we are about to see when she is replaced by Leigh Ann DeVette, Tom Cruise's sister, who did not have professional training as a publicist at the time. She will work as his publicist until November of 2005, about a year and a half.
Yeah.
But by November of 2005, we are post-Katie, we are post-Couch, we are post-War of the Worlds.
Fuck.
The storm is coming. We should mention for our listeners that we are going to watch the Couch Jump episode of Oprah Winfrey's show, and I guess we're also going to watch the Couch Jump Leno spot where he recreates his infamous behavior on Oprah's show. We're going to watch those. We're going to watch Cruise on Couches over on the Patreon and talk about them. I think I'm kind of dreading it, but I'm also really interested to see it in context too, because we've all seen the GIFs, we've all seen the memes, we've all seen like that 1 second excerpt. I really want to watch the whole thing, which is available on YouTube. So we're going to go and watch that. And
did you see it when it happened?
No, absolutely not.
I did.
Oprah
so this
had
will be interesting to talk
no
about.
cultural presence in Britain whatsoever.
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that.
It was much later. I think it was after the release of War of the Worlds that people started getting really shaky about Cruise, which is, of course, what happens in this country, too, to a certain extent. Next week, War of the Worlds. Collateral shoots between October and December of 2003. 3 weeks into the 12-week shoot, cinematographer Paul Cameron, who had previously worked on both Gone in 60 Seconds and Swordfish, and is therefore perfect for this glossy early 2000s nonsense, is fired from the project because he doesn't get along with Mann. He's replaced by Dion Beebe, an Australian cinematographer who had worked with Jane Campion in her post-piano work and shot in 2002 both Chicago and the Christian Bale Taye Diggs movie Equilibrium. Did you ever see Equilibrium?
Wow, yes, I did.
Yes. So that's who is cinematographing the rest of Collateral. As I said, the movie shot half on 35mm film and half on digital, and we'll call out a couple of specific shots as we move through the movie because there are a couple moments in this film. My jaw was on the floor.
Yeah,
they're just genuinely astounding pieces of cinematography, the likes of which I have not seen before. The movie is scored by James Newton Howard, who breaks into the industry with work on David Lynch's 1984 Dune. He had a huge career through the 90s. This same year, he also works on M. Night Shyamalan's The Village and Joe Johnston's Hidalgo. Howard estimates that half of the music he wrote for the movie was never used, replaced instead by incredibly contemporary and specific needle drops, right? Like Groove Armada and Audio Slave and Paul Oakenfold, like, don't mind if I do. This is like, this is seminal early 2000s music. Did you like it?
I don't know any of the songs you're talking about. I liked the classical music and I liked the R&B and I even enjoyed the jazz, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, the jazz. We'll get to the jazz. Collateral is released on August 6th, 2004. Off of a budget of $65 million, it makes 101 domestic and 220 worldwide. It's Michael Mann's most successful film. This is his biggest hit of his career.
Okay.
It goes in at number 1 at the box office, ahead of the second week of The Village, the third week of The Bourne Supremacy, the Jonathan Demme remake of The Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington and Liev Schreiber, and at 5th place at the box office, the Brittany Murphy, Ron Livingston, Holly Hunter movie Little Black Book, which is a film that I had completely forgot existed until I looked up the box office from this week. Spider-Man 2 is number 7 at the box office, already comfortably past $350 million domestic. A colossal hit and a genuinely great film. The Halle Berry Catwoman, not so much of a hit, not so much of a genuinely great film, is sinking fast at number 9. And at number 13, after already being in movie theaters for 9 weeks, Napoleon Dynamite has only made a quarter of what it is going to make. It has only made 12 million out of like 46 million.
What a weird little movie.
Weird film with such a long tail to it.
Such a legacy.
Yeah.
So strange.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
So that's the production story for Collateral. Let's get into it. And we will get into it with no fanfare, no hullabaloo. We will have desaturated studio title cards and no credits whatsoever. What do you think of the beginning of this film?
Right.
How does it situate you in its milieu?
I really enjoyed the beginning. I really like the character intro to Jamie Foxx. I
Yeah.
feel like I get everything about Max with no dialogue. I always think that's really hot. When you
So
can
great.
tell me everything that I need to know about a character without using any dialogue, I think that I should just shut up and never write anything again. You know?
Well, except that when we do get dialogue from him, it also is informative of his character. I think, yeah, it's a masterpiece of character introduction. We're also introduced very early to Vincent because he's walking through an airport
Yeah,
so
maybe
that he
too
can
early.
trade cases with Jason Statham.
That's what I thought that was.
Yeah, Jason Statham. According to Louis Leterrier, the director of the Transporter franchise, this is the character from the Transporter franchise. This is actually, I know,
Okay.
so weird and unnecessary.
I don't know anything about that, but
But if
all
it's
right.
not that guy, then why would you cast Jason Statham in this
That's so
completely
weird.
unnecessary role?
Yeah, I kept on thinking he was going to come back, and he never did.
Nope. He's just there to say hi, to say, welcome to LA. And then we go on with our business, I guess. We talked a little about Jamie Foxx's costuming. I absolutely love it. He's kind of doing hipster before hipster, right? He's kind of dressed down in such a way that he's obviously very comfortable. It's obviously very like casual, but it's got like a style to it. It's got a kind of retro-y something. I love his little glasses. Every choice here, I think, is just extremely good and
Yeah.
astute and accurate. I think, too, that the sound design throughout the film is not always excellent, but when it is excellent, it is really excellent.
You know, this is a movie that as I was watching it, I was thinking again, I've got to get a sound bar for the bedroom because I could tell there was more happening than I was getting.
Well, a lot of it that I find most effective is actually kind of showy. The moment that I'm thinking of here is when Max gets into his cab and he closes the door and suddenly all of
Yes.
the rush and the noise
Yes.
and the chaos of the outside world is gone. It
Yeah,
doesn't even
that
just
was really
like
cool.
dim. It is muted completely because this car is this private, intimate space. And
Yeah.
it's handled very beautifully. I think,
Yeah.
again, I kind of wish that there was a philosophical connection of some kind between that and what we're going to do in the course of this film. And there's not really, although you could be mistaken for thinking that there's going to be when we introduce Jada Pinkett Smith, when we
Yeah.
introduce Annie. This whole sequence is just lovely.
I kind of want the movie that's just the rom-com of these two.
Yeah, could we do that
Because they were
instead?
really
That would be
lovely
great.
together. Yeah.
I love that she's challenging him on the geography of LA. I love that he's right, but is also like very humble about it.
Very
He's
humble
obviously
about it. Got lucky with the lights is a great recurring line that
Extremely
really
good.
works for me.
a great way of, like deflecting, not just deflecting credit, but deflecting attention almost. It's like the
Yeah.
externalization of one's skill into the outside world is such an interesting thing to do when you don't want to, take responsibility for your own excellence, because he's constantly like deferring his excellence, right? And trading it out into the world. When she compliments him on being a taxi driver and his response is, oh, I'm not a taxi driver. This is just, I'm just doing it. I'm just getting money so that I can really start my dream of owning a limo company. Like,
Such a weird dream.
he
but
doesn't
okay.
want to be good at this, despite the fact that he's extremely good at this. It's such an interesting take on like lowercase h heroism, I think, for him. It's a really compelling bit of work. Tell me more about this opening scene and what you liked.
So the thing I love, I guess, about the two of them meeting is that there's a lot of intimacy, but you have to like work for the intimacy. And you see that happen. Like you see where she is on the phone. She's bossing him around. She's telling him what way to take. And then he makes the choice to say, well, I'm going to do something different because he really does believe that it's better. And it's pretty clear that he's not just like, fuck you, lady, I do what I want, but really wanting to do really wanting to take the best route.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
like their little conflict that they have, and that both of them are pretty lighthearted about it. I really like her turning it into, does she turn it into a bet or does he turn it into a bet? Either way, it's really cute. For like,
He offers her,
oh, it's a free ride.
It's a free
yeah,
ride.
yeah. If it's, which is crazy, but
Well, and even then too, we circle that at the end of the scene where she acknowledges that he could have taken her the longer way. It would have been slower. He would have made more money.
yeah.
Like he's kind of subverting the expectation of a cab driver here in a really interesting way. Again,
Sure.
this natural excellence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her asking him to turn the music up and him saying, oh, you're a fan of the classics.
That's
like
such a
all of
great
this
moment.
is just really lovely and human. And it kind of shows like the intimacy that happens in a car regardless, which, some of us really try not to let happen when we're like, I think of, you get into an Uber driver's car, or at least me, and the first thing I want to do is like put on my headphones and look at my phone. Like I don't want to chat with you right now, because usually the time that I'm getting an Uber drive is because I've already been hanging out with people and I'm done now. I am peopled out.
Yeah, you almost almost never get an Uber drive just in a casual, easy circumstance
No.
where you're happy to chat. Do you like his little Sherlock Holmes deduction that she is a lawyer, despite the fact that when she gets into the car and she's talking on the phone, she is clearly talking to another lawyer about the case that they are working on?
I mean, I think that's part of the joke, right? It seemed that way to me. Anyway.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's
But it was
cute.
very cute. They're darling.
What about her return? That moment when he realizes that he was so busy being a good guy and being kind to her that he didn't even get her number, and then she comes back with the card. This is nicely balanced stuff, right? It's very.
I mean, it would have been completely inappropriate for him to ask for her number, so I'm glad that he didn't, and I'm glad that she came back for it. Or to give the card, and the way that she gives the card is like, just in case you need criminal defense attorney or whatever it is that she says.
Lady, you have no idea.
It's really cute.
There's a moment here too, as she goes into the building that is going to be so pivotal at the end of the movie. Why is Vincent already in that building?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because the movie answers it, and I'm so glad that they do, because we really need it. When Max calls her, he's like, hey, he got into my car. He was there casing out the building. And I was like, of course he was. He was casing the building.
That's smart.
And I'm glad that they told us.
We don't see him case out
otherwise it's like,
anything else.
I'm sorry, what?
But we can infer that he has
everything else was like an apartment.
Sure.
Not like in this giant building, downtown. So
well, we don't know how long he's been in LA, technically.
That's also
so,
true.
Maybe we can extend a little kindness to it there. But it is odd that he comes right out. And this is it, right? This is the crux of the film. This is what works or does not work. This is going to absolutely define how much you like Collateral. Do you like Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx together? How does it work for you?
I do. No, I like them together. I think that Cruise is funny when the boss keeps calling and he's like, he's just going to keep calling me if I don't answer. And he's saying something about how, get the car back here right now and it's coming out of your pay. And he's like, tell him you're not liable. It was an accident. Like all of that.
Yeah.
I thought was funny.
It's good. Vincent doesn't completely...
Without being like slapsticky funny. You know what I mean? Like, it was just sharp.
That's what we're going for, I think. And in general, I think the lines of dialogue that we get are pretty sharp. They might be a little insubstantial, but they are doing what they set out on the page to do, at least. For me, Vincent doesn't really work as a character. He is more like a bundle of ticks wrapped up in a very sharp suit. I think he's just... I find it difficult to establish like a commonality between all of his varied interests, the guise that he is adopting, if we assume that it is a guise, this weird persona that he has of jazz-loving, spontaneity-loving, like improv guy, hitman assassin who's also very well prepared, who's talking about disconnection and separation like it is a bad thing, and yet is exploiting that disconnection and that separation in a really weird way. I don't know. He feels to me very constructed. And if at the end of the film we had broken that, if at the end of the film he had like, my real name isn't Vincent, or, I have a family back home, or had given like some glimpse of the humanity underneath, but instead, and we'll talk about this probably when we get to it, instead of doing that and humanizing him in the film's very last moment, what it does is double down on its own bullshit. What it does is double down on its own hollow metaphor. And that leaves for me a very bad taste in the mouth.
See, I just read Vincent as a true sociopath, like someone who is really bad at humaning and doesn't get it. And I love how much that perplexes Max. Like at every turn, he's just shocked afresh.
I think that's an absolutely valid read. My problem there, I think, and this is absolutely my problem there is that I'm disinterested in sociopaths. I'm disinterested in this as a mechanism for conflict and for antagonism. I think it's so much more interesting if we give this guy some real humanity and explore that, like test that, try that. And we do that so beautifully with Max. I think this film could have done it. And it's obviously choosing not to, right? This is not even like a valid complaint or criticism about the film, right? It's not okay to criticize Toy Story because it's about toys. Like, what you're getting into. You should just go with that. But still. We get the sequence where Vincent hires Max for the whole night for $600, which is such an interesting juxtaposition with that later scene where he's like defending Max as a working man to his boss. And is like, but you're giving him like, what, time and a half? He says that he's going to make $350 or $400, so you offer him $600?
Yeah.
Like offer him
$5,000.
Like if you're really into it, be into it.
Yeah, I hear what you mean.
There's a kind of specificity there that makes me think: Are we aiming at something? Are we really trying to show like a hypocrisy here? Are we trying to show a practiced exploitation here? But I'm not sure that we do. Although this, we're led to believe by Mark Ruffalo a little later in the film, this is kind of Vincent's shtick. He's done this before
that
in
part
Oakland.
I don't buy. Yeah,
I don't know
that
either.
part never worked for me. Only because there's no way that you can blame this cabbie for these murders. Like, there's no way. There are just too many of them, and they're too all over the place. And with him talking with we have the record now of him talking on the phone with his boss.
Yeah.
And that's just not.
Assuming that those calls are recorded, but I imagine
Sure,
that they would be,
but
right?
even just like the character witness of the guy who's on the phone
Sure.
that was like, this was not someone who had completely cracked and snapped.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know. That part didn't really hold water for me.
What do you think of the sudden descent of the first victim onto the top of the cab?
It was okay. It surprised me. I like Jamie Foxx's
genuinely audacious
as Max, just freaking out about it.
Yeah, particularly after we've put all this effort into establishing that this is like the cleanest cab in LA.
Yeah.
I really like that. I like how it becomes more and more ruined through the course of the night. It's a simple enough story beat, but yeah, it works really well. And from there, things just start spiraling out of control, right? They load the body into the trunk. Vincent has a plan for the evening. This is where we cut out to first introduce Mark Ruffalo, which I think works great. Vincent tells Max how their night is going to go. They're pulled over like immediately. We do the thing that you're waiting for.
That was really good.
Immediately.
That was good.
But again,
I was sweating.
It's a gorgeously constructed scene. It's extremely tense. It's extremely tight. You are waiting for either like this rescue, right? Because it could be construed as a good thing, but also we're aware of like the imminent threat of violence. And then it is just unresolved. Then they just go away because they get a more urgent call.
Yeah.
And it's nothing. And does that mean something?
I thought that was kind of great. That just kind of clanging symbol of it. Like, there's all of this stress and all of this pressure, and the cops are here, and maybe they'll get killed, or maybe I'll get killed, or maybe it's all going to be fine. Maybe it's going to shake out. Maybe I'm going to be safe. And then just have it like evaporate into nothing is just, to me, gave me such a sense of despair.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
It's interesting. Yeah, for sure. We then get to the apartment of the second victim, and Max is zip tied to the steering wheel so that he can be robbed in the world's most obvious robbery.
Yeah.
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 Just so we can demonstrate in front of Max what a badass Vincent is. Is it that he is a badass, or is it that he is, a psychopath? Which one of the, or is it both?
I think both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just his particular set of skills, as it were.
Well, and his weird loyalty too, right? The fact that he also recovers Max's wallet and brings it back to the car and gives it to him is a strange thing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of into that as a character beat, but I'm not sure that I completely understand what it's saying, because we're not in any way forging a human connection between these two men, right? That would be the other way of approaching this film.
No, but again, the sociopathic way is that like, oh, I have adopted this stray puppy until I wring its neck because it's howling too much,
Right.
Like, he just is kind of enjoying having this person along for the ride until he won't anymore. But I have no doubt ever that he will shoot Max in the face when it comes time to it.
That's, I think absolutely going to happen. I'm thinking about this a little bit in terms of Mann's filmography as a whole, because he loves the cop and criminal, we're not so different, you and I beat. He goes to that a lot. And it's weird that we don't really take a step toward that here. Yeah.
The most I would say that we get that, because we do a bit, is with our jazz singer guy, with Daniel. Like, he gets really humanized in a nice way.
I'm so curious about this. I mean, we are supposed to buy that Vincent, like all psychopaths, genuinely loves jazz, right?
Yeah.
Because he has to have that like font of knowledge. He has to have like all the Miles Davis trivia. I love this scene. It's so
great.
good.
I agree.
Though I will say, this is the beginning of this scene as we get this establishing shot of the three of them sitting at the table together. This is the first moment that for me, that's Jamie Foxx. That's not Max. That's Jamie Foxx, super cool movie star.
Interesting. I didn't see it.
He lets
then yet.
the facade just. He's not talking. He's just in the shot.
Just
and
enjoying
just
himself.
looks awesome.
That's funny.
You're like, wait, shouldn't you be more nervous about this? This feels like something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And indeed, it does. There's just a lot of business here with Vincent, right? Just a lot of, those character ticks that we were talking about. Right after that, we get the beat with Max's mother being in hospital. We get the dispatcher calling again, saying the dispatcher, I think, is an associate producer or somebody who works on the film because they couldn't find an actor whose voice was as annoying as this guy who was constantly yelling through a bullhorn all day.
Facts.
So
Sure.
they just have him do it, which is a really nice beat there. And then we go to see Max's mother for reasons which bedevil understanding.
Yeah, I don't quite get this tick here. And I also don't understand why Ruffalo is at this hospital and why he goes up to the 5th floor.
He's going to the morgue.
The 5th floor is the morgue? Why is the morgue on the 5th floor?
Know.
Doesn't that seem
this
weird
is a
and
great
wrong?
question. Yeah.
Shouldn't morgues be in the basement?
I mean,
I feel like they ought to be. But I don't know.
You're blowing the metaphor if you're having the morgue be on the 5th floor of your hospital. Yeah.
Which is like so weirdly creepy, empty, and I don't know. That was strange.
That's
but okay.
a really
strange
set.
It's a strange
It's
set.
like this is going to take a turn into something supernatural when he's just there with the one more guy. Yeah, it's weird. I do like the scene very much when they're in the elevator. I think that Ruffalo's standing up to Cruz as a performer, like really beautifully, and kind of giving this disaffected thing, which works. I don't really know what we're doing. I don't know why we motivate Max to take action against Vincent by pointing out the lies that he's been telling his mother, right? That he's been telling his mother that he is actually running the limo company, that he drives all these Hollywood movie stars around all day, all night.
Yeah.
And we expose that lie in order to motivate him to take Vincent's briefcase and so we can get a Tom Cruise run. Like I'm feeling that's maybe what we just need some action.
That is when we
here.
get the I don't know when we go to visit the mom.
Across the bridge, across the freeway, is among the best Tom Cruise runs that we have had to date. It is outrageously good. And what's brilliant is that Jamie Foxx is running like a goddamn nerd. He is running like Max, which is so good.
Yeah.
It's like Terminator 2. It's like watching Robert Patrick come after you. And it's like, you know what's going to happen. This guy is an unstoppable machine.
Yeah. Totally.
And then the choice to throw the briefcase onto the freeway and have it be destroyed, effectively see all of his preparation and his planning be cast strewn to the winds. It's a strange choice, right? What do you think we're doing narratively here? Do you have like a read on what's here, or do you think it's just an unexpected turn? Do you think it's just a zag by a film that's very keen, I think, on zagging and foiling our expectations?
Right. I think it's just a way to get Max even more on the back foot and to get him into the room with Felix. Like we needed a ploy to do that.
Yeah, which is, I think, worth doing. And
I think so too, because that's a great scene.
Getting him into the room with Felix is also what leads directly to the third act of the film, because, of course, the FBI are staking out Felix. We get basically happening at the same time. Max and Vincent going to the club. Vincent telling Max that he has to go inside pretending to be Vincent so that he can get the information from Javier Bardem, who is great in this movie.
Yeah, he's so good.
A one-scene performance, just really strong, just handles that monologue. It's that surreal, weird-ass monologue.
Yeah.
Handles it just beautifully, I think.
Yeah. I like
simultaneously, of course, we've got Mark Ruffalo going to the FBI, finding their footage, identifying the cab. We're doing all of this
all
at the
this
same
stuff
time.
is happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was not in the same space. Ruffalo was not yet anywhere near where Felix was.
He's literally across the street. This
is
the FBI nest.
That part was a little bit tricky.
Yeah, this is the FBI stakeout of Felix's club.
Okay, that makes more sense then. Okay, I was struggling a this with that.
But
because
this
it
is
did seem like they were right there. But then sometimes I was like, they can't just be hanging out with Felix. That
in the
sense.
club. That would be wild. Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you.
No, but those are the FBI cameras specifically. He's not got like traffic cameras and
yeah.
This is the listening post that they've set up to monitor the club where Felix is in residence. Felix just hanging out in a very large room by himself, far enough from the music that it just sounds bad.
That's what happens when you're a kingpin. You get to do that kind of shit.
There's that whole thing on YouTube of people who like remix and remaster songs, and they add all of this reverb and ambiance to them so that they sound as though you were hearing them in like an empty mall. And that some listeners find this music very soothing. They find there's something about listening to the quality of loud music that is loud a little bit further away from you than you would want it to be. So it's echoing and it's full of reverb.
That's interesting. I haven't heard any of that. Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for me, I'm afraid. But then I'm pretty much immune to the charms of ASMR too. So I just think I don't have whatever those spots in the brain.
The brain tickles are.
Exactly right. Oh, we're introduced here, to Bruce McGill, who is running the FBI operation. We identify the license plate of the cab. We get the scene with Javier Bardem, which I think is just great, except this is the other moment where Jamie Foxx breaks for me. That moment where he takes off his glasses and starts imitating Vincent. This is Jamie Foxx, cool movie star, not Max, guy who drives a cab and is terrified for his life.
Yeah. What I would have liked to have seen is like 1 or 2 impersonations. Like if he had given an impersonation earlier in the movie, that would have been more like, okay, I can see this guy doing this.
That's really
but
strong.
It is otherwise kind of too much of a 360. 180. Yeah. 180. I know math.
I don't love either the comedic beat of him offering the 30% discount on the cost of his services.
I like that too. Most of the
if
comedic
you get
beats
out
work
of
for me.
this, then Vincent's next job is to come and kill you for taking 30% of his paycheck, surely.
He's
Or-
not getting out of this.
Then why do any of it? He has to believe to some extent that he's going to survive. Like maybe he's just
he's
desperate.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't.
I hear what you mean.
Just a little too cool, just a little too polished, just not for me
Mhm.
quite respecting the reality of the world. And I think that if in general it had been a little more heightened, it could have accommodated those moments a little better. If in general Max had been a little cooler, but then if he'd been cooler, I probably wouldn't have liked him as much. I don't think he's as fun there, right? It does get closer to like some weird, buddy cop thing that's happening. Yeah.
And I like when he's finished like being a badass and he walks through the club feeling like a badass.
Yeah.
You can like see it in his posture and just like, that was cool. That felt cool. I feel cool. That was neat. That was gratifying to watch.
So from there, we learned that the FBI have the wrong idea about Max. Ray's boss is calling him off, but Ray knows that something is up and is going to continue to investigate, and they're all going to go to the club Fever. But before we get there, we get what is, I think, the most interesting and complex, and for me, reading this as a pretty insubstantial piece of work, the most damning sequence in the film, which is the coyote crossing the street, followed by the wolf. Yeah.
Oh, I just saw 2 coyotes, but I get it, I guess, except that a wolf in LA, you gotta want that, but okay.
Well,
coyote for sure.
We're also kind of echoing that idea of the story that he tells about the deer hitting the car.
Yeah.
He's like, you on the south side?
South Central deer.
Yeah.
They're out there, man.
It's a gorgeously shot sequence.
Yeah, I can't be mad about it.
The use of the digital video here, I think, is just so intimate and so immediate and so all the colors are just saturated.
Yeah.
The fact that he doesn't even hit a red light, he just slows down and stops, and then the coyote crosses, then the wolf crosses. We get the reaction shots from Vincent, which are inscrutable. We get the reaction shots from Max, which are inscrutable, and then we continue on our way. What do we make of this? What is this? Is there anything here? Please help me find something here so that I can like this film more than I do.
I mean, it's just a metaphor, I'm sure. I wish I had realized that it was a wolf and not 2 coyotes.
Yeah.
I don't know why that didn't register
It's
for
just
me.
predator and prey, right?
Yeah, but they're 2 predators too.
True, but predators of different magnitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's more interesting.
The human animal, it's the incursion of nature into something that is so artificial, that is, Michael Mann is a very urban director. He is famous for the ways in which he depicts cities and city life. So maybe that there's something playing out
It makes it like literally dog eat dog.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, also solitary to a degree, right? Pack animals that are solitary in the hunt is an interesting kind of, if we're thinking about association, if we're thinking about society and community, if we're thinking about separation and disconnection and disenfranchisement, maybe there's something interesting there too. But I'm just not sure that there is.
I don't know.
For sure a vibe, Elizabeth, no kidding. And maybe I like it much more as a vibe than I do as a metaphor.
I think that's cool.
At Club Fever, Vincent and Max go inside, pursued separately by the FBI and by Ray.
Yeah.
Chaos is unleashed, and we get
nothing in this club works for me.
No, it's
really
very
bad.
strange. Talk me through that. Say more.
Too much. Everybody's just shooting in all directions. Too much carnage. Too much. Well, I'll say the one thing that was actually cool. I really expected a whole lot of gross, male gazy shots of women dancing, and we did not get a one.
It is perhaps, in Michael Mann's defense, that though he has little skill or interest in writing female characters, he also has really no interest in ogling them.
Yeah, not at all.
And depicting them primarily sexually.
Facts.
He's really respectful of the one woman we get in this film.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do get here the interesting character beat of Vincent deliberately shooting the security guard who was about to shoot Max, thereby saving Max's life and giving Max a look of, we'll see what I just did for you.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I don't know.
No, I like it too in its moment. I just can't build it into anything. Someone has given me a whole big bag of Lego blocks and they're all super cool, but they're from different sets and don't fit together. And I'm trying to build a log cabin Starship Castle, but I can't.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair criticism.
Vincent eventually kills the target, who we do not care about,
Nope,
and then kills
not at
Ray,
all.
who we do care about.
Very much. And so fast. That was shocking.
Yeah.
As a sudden slap in the face, it worked for me. To see all the light go out of Max's eyes, that worked for me too.
Yeah.
But
After seeing him come
narratively,
to life
yeah.
as Mark Ruffalo finally connects
Yeah.
with him and I understand you, I believe you, I can save you, I can help.
Yep.
But there is no help. There is no hope. This is where we are. This is the world that we're in. It is interesting. It does unfortunately, render all of the shots in Ruffalo's POV completely incidental to the proceedings.
Yeah.
I said at the beginning of the podcast, you could cut those out and the film would not be any different. And I stand by that. Absolutely. In fact, you could cut those out and it might even be better. Because then when Max says, what about Fanning? We also do not know who he's talking about. Just like Vincent, we have who? That might work even better. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Back in the cab, Vincent waxes philosophical. Max observes that he, in fact, is disconnected, is isolated, is looking for significance, is looking for patterns and connection because he doesn't feel them. And then Vincent gives him the monologue, right? And I remember even back in 2004, I had not seen Collateral, but I do remember people in theater groups giving this monologue as an audition piece. I didn't know where it came. Yes, absolutely. For me, in 2004, it was this, and it was still the monologue from Trainspotting, depending on what you were auditioning for. Absolutely. Yeah.
God. Okay. Interesting.
What do you think of that? I mean, it's crafted. And again, line by line, I think the script of this film is very good.
Yeah.
Does this work for you?
Yeah, I liked it. It's written, but it's also naturalistic. He repeats himself a lot in the way that people do, especially as they're coming to a point.
Lovely cadence.
Yeah.
Especially the way that he is jumping subjects. I just the very end of it. Don't you talk to me about murder? All it ever took was a down payment on a Lincoln Town Car. That girl, you can't even call that girl. What the fuck are you still doing driving a cab? Hot. Really, really good. The bounce of that from subject to subject is really strong, I think. I mean, it is philosophically vacuous, right?
Yeah.
it is a big conversation about nothing, but ultimately, except maybe it is about presentation. Maybe this is the thesis you can drag out of this film, is that it is about the superficies, that it is about being superficial and hollow, right? That is why Vincent is dressed that way, because if Vincent isn't dressed that way, if Vincent is actually able to slip through society unnoticed and unseen, then he's nobody. Like maybe his distinctiveness is the thing that he has to hang everything else upon. I don't know. I want to find something. I really do.
I can
really
feel
do.
it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You got to vibe with it. You got to let it go.
Well, speaking of vibes, this is the point at which Max decides to just race through the midnight streets of LA. Gorgeous.
Awesome.
Gorgeous.
Really cool.
Also, I know we've talked about this in previous episodes of this podcast, but please can we bring back helicopters?
I know.
Helicopter shots
they look
greater
so
than
much
drone
better
shots.
than a drone shot. I know. I agree.
They have a weight and a significance that a drone shot
don't
just
know
does.
why.
I don't
it
either.
Defies any kind of explanation, but it's true.
I think a little bit of it is that you can just put a real camera on a helicopter in the way that you can't put a real camera on a drone. You know?
Yeah, sure.
And it's just, those overhead shots in particular are astonishing.
Agreed.
That
really
is
gorgeous.
Perhaps the moment when it feels most like a video game, where it feels most like
probably
pull the right trigger to accelerate. Oh, okay. Follow your mini map. So Max crashes the car. I think it's just
I wasn't
a terrific
expecting him to
sequence.
crash the car. I really wasn't. Not in that way, anyway.
And to crash it so comprehensively, right?
Yes.
He just
And purposefully.
destroys it,
And-
which is
oh,
really great. They scrabble over the gun, but then we hear the sirens, so Vincent runs off. We then get the harmless cop. LAPD's most harmless cop, 2003 to 2004.
You were in an accident, man. Just sit
Everything's
down,
gonna
take a
be
deep
okay.
breath.
Yeah, discovering the body in the trunk, which
Yeah.
somehow has not flown free of the car in all of the
Sure.
confusion and the many, many spins that the cab does, holding Max at gunpoint, arresting him, and then Max, because he sees that Annie is the final target.
Yeah.
How
That was
did
a
we-
nice twist.
You think so?
I think so.
You think it's okay to use this character who was established, this woman, let's be clear here, this woman who was established as a potential love interest in the beginning of the film,
sure.
to motivate this frankly heroic action that he takes here of wresting the cop's gun from him and then handcuffing said cop to the crashed taxi, then
saying,
running off saying,
Call the cops.
Good beat.
I love that beat.
Good beat, funny moment.
Yeah. Someone's going to get killed if I don't go.
Is it weird?
Look, I'm not going to say it's not problematic, but I enjoy it. It's fun.
The main use of a woman, you see, is to motivate a man into action.
I know. My question is, Cruz, Vincent, kept on looking at that business card and talking about the girl.
Yeah.
Had he made the connection that this was the same woman or not?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't imagine so. But
I don't know
possibly.
either.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
It doesn't play out with any significance at the end of the film, but yeah. I don't know what to make of his dossier, right? I don't know.
Why does he need such a big briefcase?
Right? Is it also true that he has not internalized the details of his targets? He's got 6 targets in one night. He's obviously, as you said, cased the joint. He's obviously ready for this. Does he really not remember?
The next
Is there
two? Yeah.
a different game being played by sending Max to go to Javier Bardem to get the little USB key with the extra information on?
I mean, probably not, right? Because that's a pretty high risk for a little reward just to like fuck with a guy.
I think it's primarily interested in fucking with the audience. I think
that
is
agreed.
What this film exists to do. It's just to keep you on the edge of your seat. You know?
I think that's okay.
Yeah?
Like, I don't need a movie like this to be ironclad. Like, I don't need it to have no holes in the plot. I just need it to have few enough that I can go along for the ride and not just be completely thrown out.
I was a little bothered by this, I have to admit. I was a little bothered by the fact that Max's reckless high-speed chase across LA had led them 2 blocks away from where Annie is, unfortunately. If only I'd driven in the other direction. This whole thing would have turned out differently.
They were on the way to that address, right?
Yeah, but then he just starts driving recklessly. He could have gone anywhere. And he just, I guess, continued driving toward your destination will be on the right, 2 blocks after your horrifying car crash.
Yeah.
He steals the cell phone from the guy that he runs past on the street and heads up to the top of the parking garage so that he can get a very cinematic angle on Annie's building, I guess.
Pretty cool.
This is, for me, the most outstanding cinematography in the whole thing.
It's so cool. It looks amazing.
When we are
feels good too.
Close on Vincent's face in the office and, I don't know, 500 yards away, you can see Jamie Foxx on the top of the parking garage.
Yeah.
And we're using the digital camera, so everything is pin sharp. Everything is in focus. What an outstanding shot.
It's really cool.
I have never seen anything like that in another film. I think it's just genuinely incredible. And honestly, like, we're really close to worth the price of admission just for that. I think that's so
and the shots
good.
where you see Cruz in the office and Annie.
Yeah, I wish that she had been dressed a little more distinctively so that we could tell from the long distance. So it was just more readily communicable on screen, like exactly where she was, exactly where he was.
Oh, I was okay with that because she was the only one in that building.
That's
the
true.
building being so empty. Yeah, I was all right with that.
And then we get kind of our final showdown.
That's our showdown.
Right?
Yeah.
Vincent cuts the power. We get the conceit of the battery running out on the terrible 2004 flip phone.
I remember. We all had that phone.
Cute, but yeah, it's a little convenient, narratively, but that's fine. And then Vincent cuts the power, which of course removes that from the proceedings anyway. Max runs toward the building. He finally gets to Annie. We go through our whole shootout.
I love that he has to learn how to shoot a gun, and turn the safety off.
Yeah,
and I was
he
like, same.
communicates that
also.
very well. And actually, this is the one moment for me where Michael Mann's commitment to depicting gunfire as realistically as possible actually really works. Is when he pulls the trigger for the first time and jumps and shoots the plate glass window.
Yeah,
that really works for me.
Yes.
I think that's a very powerful moment. The sequence here where Vincent throws the chair through the plate glass window and jumps over it, but trips and falls.
Yeah,
an actual accident that happened on set. But because Cruz stayed in character and exited the shot properly, they both decided to use that one because it's funny.
I love it when that happens. And it's not really even funny. It's like desperate. It's scrabbly.
It's getting back to that,
this is after
Terminator
he's gotten
2 thing.
shot, right?
No,
or
not
is it
yet.
not?
No,
not
he
yet.
hasn't been shot yet. No, this is getting back to the Terminator 2 thing of this guy is just unstoppable. He's just it's
he's
ugly
just going to keep coming.
And it's ungainly, but he's just going to keep going, and that's wild.
Really harrowing.
Yeah. We run down into the train station. We get on the train. We think that we're safe, but somewhat implausibly.
Yeah.
Vincent gives chase and jumps on the back of the train, which I honestly didn't need.
Ridiculous in a very Mission Impossible sort of way. But also, that thing you're describing where he's just going to keep coming. He's just going to keep coming.
There's a fantastic detail here that I really love, that in the final shootouts, as the lights are going out and we're, just firing wildly into the darkness, when the lights come back up, you can see the indentations on the door in front of where Max is standing. 2 at chest height and 1 at head height.
Whoa.
Because the door was closed, the bullets hit the door and didn't perfectly execute Max.
Oh my
It's a really,
That
really
is cool.
nice
I didn't
touch.
notice that. I'm
Yeah.
glad you pointed it out.
And then the worst thing in the world happens, which
Yeah.
is that Vincent repeats the story that he tells at the beginning of the person
Yeah.
dying
I wish he hadn't done that. I
on
wish
the
that
train
they had
and being
just
undiscovered for 6
let
hours.
us
You can just let it be a
just let
subtext.
it be. I know.
Particularly if you're not really going to like connect that subtext
Also-
to anything anyway.
Yeah, but his whole question, do you think anyone's going to notice? It's like, well, first of all, you're in a suit and
First
you're
of all,
drenched in
sir.
blood. Also, there were like 12 gunshots. And
Also-
there's a woman clearly in like the car behind us because we've already shown her a couple
Yep.
of times. So yeah,
This woman
people are going to
who
notice.
has no reaction to these two people coming onto the train and hiding on the floor, by the way. Very chill. This isn't New York. Maybe in LA someone would ask a question. In New York, I understand. No one's going to say a goddamn thing.
Oh, so strange.
Also,
yeah.
you look like Tom Cruise if Tom Cruise were crazy. Someone
Yeah.
is definitely
Yeah.
going to notice. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a really disappointing moment. And
I agree. Yeah.
I like very much the cinematography again as we come out from
Beautiful.
the train into the dawn light,
Absolutely.
like the pre-dawn light. We're communicating these light levels really beautifully and carefully. But
Yeah.
I'm so infuriated by that line. I'm so infuriated by
I
the
agree.
lampshade
It was
that's
a real
being
letdown.
hung
Yep.
on the subtext of nothing. That it's
I
frustrating
get it.
because I also want to just sink into this film and enjoy it. But this is a crucial film, right? Tom Cruise plays a villain very rarely. We've had 3 so far. We've had Taps, we've had Interview with the Vampire, and we've had this.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it.
Wow.
And
Good
this
point.
is such an interesting performance, and he's committing to it so
Yeah.
fully. Everyone is committing to it so fully. I personally am frustrated that this film does not amount to anything, but I can't deny it as a roller coaster ride. I can't deny it
Yeah.
as an impeccably shot, impeccably crafted, beautifully composed piece of work that is maybe a career best performance for Jamie Foxx. Like maybe a career best performance for Jada Pinkett Smith. Probably not.
I
I
was gonna
like
say, I haven't seen
Niobe.
enough of
I
their
like
other
Niobe
work to
so
know.
much
Yeah.
more.
Mhm.
Not a career best performance for Mark Ruffalo, but he acquits himself beautifully.
Mhm.
And Michael Mann's most commercially successful film
Sure.
ever. You can't take that away from it. I just wish there were more.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm left in this
Yeah.
surprisingly brief episode of The Last Star in Hollywood. Do you have anything left to say before you want to put this on the list?
No, just like sometimes you want good, yummy fast food with like hot, crispy French fries and American cheese on your burger. And this movie is that.
I get
was
that.
cool for
I
that.
get that.
Yeah.
As we've said before, people go to movies for different things.
Sure.
I go for story. And the story here,
It's a bit of a letdown. Yeah.
well, it's
Spectacle,
the worst
excellent.
combination too, because it has enough.
Sure.
It has the signposts of something that's doing
Yeah.
something really ambitious.
I do know what you mean.
I feel there's something in the way that it is disjointed that reminds me of Magnolia. There's something like you're seeking commonality and connection across these anonymized spaces, right? It's not even that these spaces are anonymous. It is that they are
Yeah.
deliberately made anonymous by the process of the film itself. I find that so rich. I find it so interesting. I would love to interrogate nature in the urban environment. I would love to interrogate what it is that is driving Vincent in this film, and we just don't.
Yeah.
And you can't fault a film for not doing something that only you wanted to do. So that's where we are, I guess. If this is your favorite of Tom Cruise's movies, I completely understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Defensible.
Yeah. Let's put it on the list then.
Yeah.
Where are you looking?
Well, I think it's clear that I liked it more than you did. So it reminds me of The Firm, which is our number 7. It's maybe not as it's definitely not as narratively satisfying as The Firm, though, and that does make it take a hit for me as well.
The Firm is also not like completely comprehensive in its approach to its own storytelling, in its approach to its own moral landscape there, but
True.
certainly somewhere around there. For me,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking down by Far and Away, down by Eyes Wide Shut, in fact, is where I'm actually looking.
Ooh, Eyes Wide Shut.
Well,
That might be a little low
because
for me.
It's interestingly composed, but ultimately
Yeah.
doesn't amount too much. It's my emotional reaction to this film is very similar, I think, to my
Yeah.
emotional reaction to Eyes Wide Shut. But yeah, I'm the quality of the filmmaking, if nothing else. And I'm sorry, hey, you guys, Michael Mann in this instance is a better filmmaker than Stanley Kubrick in that instance.
So wild.
A shocking thing for somebody
Yeah.
to say. It is certainly a more beautiful film.
Well, we've got
too,
The Firm
so-
at number 7. Eyes Wide Shut is at number 14.
Well,
the other one I'm looking here at the list that it kind of reminds me of is maybe Minority Report.
Minority Report is
which
exactly
number
what I was
10.
going to say. How does it sit
Yeah.
with you vis-a-vis Minority Report? A film which I think maybe didn't do all that you wanted it to do, didn't do what I wanted to do either. We certainly have the weird, greenhouse visit in the middle of that film, and we're
So
uncertain about our resolution of the status quo that we set up at the end of that movie with our precogs living on a cute little island. Spoilers for Minority Report if you're listening to these podcast episodes out of order, I guess. There's something there too. I think this is a better looking film.
Yeah.
I think that the core performances are maybe even better.
Yeah. I think so too. I would put it
iconic,
above.
maybe.
Yes. Right above that is number 9, Interview with the Vampire.
There's a certain pleasure, a certain synchrony to putting his two main villain roles side by side.
It's
there
true.
on the list.
Plus those beautiful, I guess it was San Francisco, but the helicopter shots.
Absolutely.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. That feels about right. So what do you between Interview and Rain Man, or between Interview and Minority Report? Between Interview and Minority Report. That's where it goes, right?
Let's put it there.
Our new 9.5.
Number 10 on the list. I think I would maybe tuck it right under Minority Report, but I feel good enough about this. It's our new number 10 on the list.
That does seem insane to have Minority Report in the top 10 and then Collateral push it out. But
well, which would you rather watch again? I have no doubt that you would rather watch this movie again than Minority Report.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Personally, yes. Yeah. I'm maybe an outlier there, but it's our list.
So that will do it. Collateral going in at number 10 on the list, 10 of 26. So basically in the top third. That's a pretty good spot for it.
That's reasonable. Sure.
Everybody can be happy about that. And I expect absolutely no emails at laststarpod@gmail.com. Everything that we do here at The Last Star in Hollywood is possible thanks to you guys, up to and including watching Boogie Nights for a forthcoming bonus episode over on the Patreon page. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I've gone through this whole emotional journey. We watched the film right after watching Magnolia for the first time.
It. Yeah.
Then I did not want to watch it again.
No.
Now I kind of do want to watch it again. I've kind of had this arc over the last couple of weeks. And
true.
You at least will get to enjoy all of the Burt Reynolds you can handle.
Reynolds.
I will get all of the Heather Graham that I can deal with.
Sure.
Maybe not all that I can deal with, but a good heap and Alpin. It's going to be a ton of fun to talk about that absolutely lunatic film that kickstarts PTA's career in 1997. That will go up on the Patreon page sometime within the next couple of weeks. We've got until the end of the month, I guess. But if you would like to see some of our previous bonus episodes, patreon.com/nextword. Pledge your support. That's how we do this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's
we
a very
recently had a
complicated
really
machine.
fun one where we were just up having martinis and chatting about movies we'd watched and my birthday.
We did,
and the
following
Renaissance Fair.
Following your birthday, following the eclipse, on the night of the eclipse.
That's right.
We got on mic for what was supposed to be 50 minutes.
Hilarious.
We ended up talking for an hour and 45 and then just posted the whole thing.
Yep.
It was a ton of fun.
Times.
Patreon.com/nextword for that. We would like to thank, too, our wonderful superstar patrons who are pledging at a slightly higher support level.
Thank
you. You guys, you're the best.
Yes. Thank you, Leslie Skipa, Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, and Chris Dons.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Couldn't do it without you. Wouldn't do it without you, quite frankly.
That's true.
Next week on the show, it's the end of the world as we know it in more ways than one. Steven Spielberg's 2005 sci-fi masterpiece, one of the most interesting films in Tom Cruise's entire filmography, War of the Worlds.
I'm interested to watch it again. It did not stick with me like it did with you. So I'm
it's
really
a
stoked for it. Okay.
It's an interesting one.
We'll see.
As subtle as a Martian invasion can be.
It's like, okay.
But I'm looking forward to talking about it. That'll be next week. Until then, thank you guys so much for listening.
We'll see you next time.